So Grab needs no introduction. We're just gonna jump right into it. So what we're gonna cover here is we're gonna talk about how Grab is seizing opportunities, in turbulent times. It's not been easy for everyone, and some pessimism, on the streets. So we want to talk about opportunities and how Grab is sort of leveraging upcoming trends. And I guess to start, right? So obviously we're living in volatile times with tariffs and a lot of job layoffs. So from your perspective, how has Grab sort of seized the moment that is now, and what, if you could sketch out broadly what it's been doing? Yeah.
Thanks, Terence. Good to be here. This is a very important question for all of us. There is no doubt that these are difficult times. Issues in the Middle East, tariffs. We do see consumers being very careful. So the first thing that we need to do is make our services more and more affordable. So it's been a big focus for us, using the density we have because of our scale, but using AI and other technologies to drive that density, translate it into more affordable prices. That way we can keep the marketplace very vibrant, because we are aware that during difficult times, the gig employment opportunities are super important for many people in our society. So we've got to keep the demand growing by being affordable, and then we have a lot of people coming into the market who want those jobs as drivers. And so we see almost like a counter-cyclical effect where there's a lot of supply of drivers comes in at these moments, and that makes the platform even more affordable, which then provides more opportunity for merchants, etc. So the first thing is affordability. The other thing that we know is that during times like this, conventional banks tend to cut back. They have a certain risk appetite. They start to get concerned about lending. And we are therefore developing non-bank financial services, fintech services, to be able to lend. And most recently, we actually have 3 bank licenses, including here in Indonesia, where we have Superbank. And we have a lot of unconventional data that we're able to use in our credit models, which allows us to lend in times of uncertainty when banks will not lend. And of course, we have a collections capability as well, that where we can pre-deduct the repayments, so that helps with collections. So we think we can be a counter-cyclical lender as well. And I think finally, the most important thing in these difficult times, as we saw during COVID, is to work very closely with our communities and with the governments to make sure that we support the micro SMEs. The micro SMEs are the ones who provide so much of the employment opportunities. So here in Indonesia, we have the Kota Masa Depan program, where in 15 of the smaller cities, we've actually helped to digitize 200,000 of the MSMEs in order to prepare them to be digital and to compete in the future. So I think those 3 things that mean that although we feel that Grab is strong and is able to withstand these difficult times, what we've learned during COVID and ever since then is that we have to make sure that our communities are also strong, and then they can thrive through these difficult times alongside of Grab.
And how do you balance sort of the drive for profit, right? Given that Grab has been profitable for a few quarters now, and this need to also cater to cost-sensitive consumers?
Yeah, it's a challenge. We are a public company. We have delivered 13 quarters in a row now of sequentially improving profit. So we have a key stakeholder. Our shareholders are key stakeholders, and we're very conscious of that responsibility to them. But our primary responsibility is to make sure we have a healthy marketplace. And the healthy marketplace means that we're developing new job opportunities for drivers, driven by the success of our merchants, who have to thrive and provide new services on the platform in order to attract consumers. So we need that flywheel to keep spinning. So I think our shareholders understand that. We've been very clear that here in Southeast Asia, even though Grab is relatively large compared to other players, we're still very, very small in terms of penetration. Only about 6% of the Southeast Asian population use Grab on a monthly basis. So we're just scratching the surface. So our shareholders are with us in the sense that they realize that the real opportunity is the long-term opportunity. So we are focusing on marketplace health to make sure everybody benefits and the marketplace continues to grow to reach its fullest potential.
And above that, there's the news of the 1.5 billion, right, convertible bond that Grab is raising to fund expansion. And I guess to your point about the 6% penetration, there's room for growth. So where do you see this money being deployed?
Yeah, so we did a 1.5 billion convertible bond, which we upsized from 1.25 billion last week. I think what that shows is that there is strong investor interest in Southeast Asia. So it's the largest ever convertible bond in Southeast Asia. Hopefully we've raised the ceiling for you all to raise money as well. It shows that overseas investors, and most of the money came from outside of Southeast Asia, they want to invest here. So that's the good news. I think they're looking for, they want to be selective though. They're looking for companies that do what they say and live up to their promise. And we will use it to double down in AI. There's a lot of new AI investment that we're working on. A lot of the big foundational models from partners of ours like OpenAI are excellent and incredibly powerful and can unleash a lot of opportunity, but they need to be fine-tuned for the Southeast Asia environment. So one of the use cases, for example, is the voice recognition. When we first started using the 4.0 voice recognition module for Southeast Asian dialects, the recognition level was pretty low, actually 45% of the time it could recognize and the rest of the time it couldn't. So not good enough for production. We've now fine-tuned it with local dialects, and we're getting up to 87%. And here in Indonesia, we will make sure that we cover all of the dialects and sub-language groups that we can over time to make it more recognizable. The primary use case for that is the visually impaired. So we're already working with societies for visually impaired around the region to roll that out. They've obviously, for obvious reasons, it's hard for them to use the app in its current form without good voice recognition. So access is the first initiative. But we do believe that over time, perhaps the way in which we all interact with apps will dramatically change. And so this kind of ability to work with local languages will become more and more important. So that's the first reason that we will use it, which is AI and tech investment. The second is going to be to continue to expand our services. So for example, we acquired Chope, which is a restaurant reservation platform recently, to help our merchants because we are partnering with them for delivery, but we want to partner with them for dining in as well, where we can help them with our marketing platform to bring more and more customers into their shops. The economy is not strong, so they need that extra muscle. And then M&A obviously is an opportunity for us where we can use it to increase the density and increase the productivity of everybody on the platform. So I think the convertible bond success is an endorsement of Southeast Asia and its potential, and allows us to hopefully collectively to do more for Southeast Asia going forward.
Obviously, I'm not going to comment on individual deals, so I won't ask about that. But could you sketch out broadly what are some verticals that you find really interesting in which the money could be deployed towards acquisitions, potentially?
Yeah, we are all the time trying to keep this flywheel going faster and faster in the marketplace. So when we can work with merchants to add new services onto the platform, so I just mentioned reservations and dining out is one category. Another category is groceries and making sure that the cost of delivery and the speed of delivery gets faster and faster to grow the online grocery business. Financial services is a huge opportunity. So in Southeast Asia, 65% of the population are either completely unbanked or underbanked because they have very thin credit file information available for lenders. So if we can free up and increase the transparency for lending in Southeast Asia, that's a massive opportunity as well. So those services, as we bring them onto the platform, then drive a lot more consumer interest, And when you get the consumer interest higher, that will create more jobs for drivers. And therefore, the drivers can become more productive because they're getting more back-to-back jobs. And then that flywheel keeps running. So we see consolidation and being bigger not as a question of being more powerful or dominant. We're trying to use it as a way to make this business, which is essentially a low-margin business, let's face it, groceries, ride-hail, food delivery, the cost has to be super, super low. So the low-margin business, in order to be productive and viable for everybody involved in the marketplace, must be large in order to be efficient. And so that's what we're looking for, is efficiency and the ability to keep the whole ecosystem healthy.
Yeah. So shifting to AI, it's a very big theme in this event. So you have your partnerships with OpenAI, with Anthropic. Can you talk about how serious does Grab treat AI, or how is it looking at AI?
Yeah, I think the panel beforehand, obviously, were making the same point, but it is absolutely fundamentally an inflection point. Just as the shift from web to mobile was an inflection point, we see the shift from mobile into AI first being an inflection point. So we're all in on it, completely in terms of our use inside the company, because we're in a very competitive industry. We have to move fast and be agile. So the way that our coders are using AI prompts for coding support, for example, is fundamental. But the way in which we support the participants on our platform is probably the most important aspect. So we have now, for example, a driver co-pilot that will advise the drivers where to position themselves, using all the marketplace data we have available, where to position themselves in order to optimize their earnings throughout the day. So even while they're on the job, the co-pilot is working out where the next job will come, how we can get a back-to-back job for them so that they can be productive, not have downtime. Similarly, on the food delivery side, with the density that we have, we're aiming for what we call hyper-batching, so that one driver, without delaying the order in any way, can deliver multiple food orders together and be ultra kind of productive in terms of their earnings. On the merchants as well, we've built a merchant AI chatbot. So imagine if you're a small long-tail merchant. You might be good at cooking, but you might not be good at being a commercial success. So imagine if you had an AI assistant that was your CFO, your CMO, your chief supply officer all in one. We've launched that. We have now 80,000 merchants using this, and it's so interesting when you look at some of the conversations that are going on. The AI chatbot becomes almost like a personal support psychiatrist, an advocate for the merchant. Here in Indonesia, you see the chat going backward and forward. They call each other sis, like, hey sis, it's been such a tough weekend. Don't worry, sis, keep going. Your sales this week were much better than last week. If and then asking for ideas on menus. What should I do? So all sorts of use cases that we didn't anticipate. But because the AI chatbot has access to so much data, and because people like OpenAI have created these very empathetic interactions, it becomes more and more like of a friend and companion for what is a very tough job, being a merchant on the network.
Yeah, sort of like a Grab therapist, right? Like giving
right.
advice, getting them through a tough day.
That's what it appears to be. We didn't anticipate that, but a lot of the conversation goes in that direction.
And I think there was one point where Grab pretty much went on the standstill, right, to just grasp AI. Can you talk about what happened there?
Oh, yeah, right. Yes, we had what we called our generative AI sprint in the summer last year. And literally for 9 weeks, we said to the entire organization, you don't have to ship anything. You just have to learn about AI, embrace it, and then come up with experimental use cases where you think it could be applied. So it's kind of a crazy thing to do for a company of our scale with so many BAU issues to deal with. The cost of that, let me think, is probably just our engineering time for 9 weeks is probably about $100 million US. So that's a big investment to make. And it did a few things. It basically, raised the awareness and got us off, lifted us up from the BAU business to say, what could we do that's transformational? And there are a lot of really good initiatives that came out of that, like the merchant AI chatbot. That was one of the outcomes of the sprint. But at the same time, it also acted as a cultural pivot point where everybody started thinking AI first and allowed us to really kind of invest in our people and make sure that our talent was not going to get out of date and really inspire them, hopefully, to embark on a whole new learning curve in their individual careers, which I think is essential for all of us to think about. How do we retool ourselves? But it's particularly important in the tech world to make sure we don't miss out on this big wave.
So what did that look like on the ground level? So obviously, you guys have to keep the business running, but was everyone working on some AI project, or what did that look like?
So for the tech folks, it was completely tools down. Like they didn't have to ship anything for 9 weeks. And 9 weeks in our world is a lot. There will be a lot normally that would need to be shipped. So that's really dramatic. We had experts coming in from OpenAI, from Anthropic, from Microsoft, from Google, etc. All taking us through what they were thinking, how they were thinking about the future. There were workshops about brainstorming what experimental uses could be there. And even for the non-tech folks, everybody went through kind of an educational process which made us rethink how our personal productivity could be improved, and also made us more aware of some of the business model changes that might come up through this. So really dramatic, transformational kind of reset of how we think about technology.
Yeah, and 2 months is a long time. And did the roadmap of the company shift after the 2 months? How did that change?
Well, we've always been a big believer in AI. So we probably now have more than 1,000 AI models running, which may make us, the most intense user of AI, potentially in the region. But what this was about was the generative AI, the shift there. And I think it entirely changed our pipeline of technology projects, particularly the architectural focus of our tech. We made a dramatic re-engineering of the architecture of the future that we wanted to pursue. So the way we're planning for our tech capabilities, we've moved away from engineering headcounts, particularly at the junior levels, into more data science, and obviously now AI skilled at the very highest level. Like even brought people in from outside Southeast Asia as well, but also put in big programs of development of generative AI skill set building within the company. So the demographics within the company have also changed quite a lot.
Yeah, very interesting. So shifting to long-term bets, arguable, but I would say maybe the most consequential application of AI or Gen AI would be in autonomous vehicles, because that makes up is a very major part of Grab's business. And I think Grab has made some moves early, right, in autonomous vehicles. Could you talk about what you see, how you see AVs impacting the region?
Yeah, no, I've sat in AVs in China and in the US, and it's an amazing experience. For those of you who haven't tried it, I thoroughly recommend it. But we all know that the environment that those AVs operate in is very different than the environment that we all experience here in Southeast Asia. So first thing I would say is the AVs are remarkable, and they will definitely come in because they'll drive safety, and the cost curve will come down. But the rate at which they will come into Southeast Asia, the major cities in Southeast Asia, maybe Singapore might be an exception, but the major cities in Southeast Asia will be slower for 3 reasons. I mean, one is the environment here is just so much more complex and more difficult for them to navigate. The second is the income levels in the places where they're taking off are much higher, so the cost replacement curve is at further out for us here in Southeast Asia. So the business rationale for bringing them in will be less strong in the main. And the third is the safety challenge of operating in the environment. So I think here it's going to be a long tail of transition. So, and there will be a long period of hybrid operation where there'll be continued human drivers as well as the AVs. We're leaning into it hard. We're the largest transport platform in Southeast Asia, so we have to. And we want to, because we want to study how will this change the employment opportunities for the drivers. There are new types of jobs that will be created from the autonomous vehicles, like remote drivers and the servicing of the vehicles. If you don't have a driver, who's servicing the vehicles? So the whole operations part of it will create new jobs. We want to understand what those are with these trials. We want to be the first to try to optimize between AVs and transport platforms. There's a lot for us to learn there, so we really want to lean into that. So although we are fully into this and we expect over time for the safety and the cost performance of AVs to be a dramatic public safety positive, our primary focus is to make sure it's also a positive for the communities that we work with, including the driver partners.
And since we're in Indonesia, how do you see specifically AVs play out here, given that it's mostly two-wheelers, right? Scooters, bikes. Would there be self-driving scooters, or what's your take on how it evolves here?
It's a great question, Terence. Yeah, the majority of rides in Indonesia on Grab are on 2 wheels, not 4 wheels. So that's one of the complications and challenges of why I'm saying it's going to be a long tail adoption here. But by the way, there are already companies developing AVs for 2 wheels. Now, whether those 2-wheel AVs can then swerve in and out of, between lanes, or whether they'll be designed for some of the developed markets where, in fact, you're not allowed technically to change lanes on a motorbike, will be a different matter. I can imagine the challenge of the way that the 2 wheels here, which I use as well here, the way that they can weave like water between the cars, I think would be a really big challenge for AVs for a long time to come.
Yeah. So shifting to sort of like startups, and obviously Grab is I guess by now an incumbent, right? And I think we talked about this. We are sort of in a phase of consolidation in the industry where larger players pull ahead, given that they can raise the capital. So I don't know, if you were to put yourself in the shoe of a smaller competitor or even a startup, how would you navigate, this sort of situation?
Well, hopefully startups will want to work with people like Grab because we have scale. There are lots of things that we still, would like to do better. And if they have great innovations that can make our marketplace more healthy, we're very, very open. So we'd love to work with them to help them scale and be early adopters of new technology in Southeast Asia. We want the talent base for technology in Southeast Asia to get stronger and deeper because that's good for everybody. It's good for all of us in this community. So we want to be a partner to startups. And in fact, we have a captive venture capital arm inside Grab where we invest in startups to help them get to scale if we think they've got something great to add. But reflecting on our experience, I think there are 2 learnings that I would advocate for startups. One is get really close to the ground truths. So we talked a lot about AI this morning, but AI has to solve real-world problems, and it has to do it in a human-centric way. So the only way of solving those problems is to get close to the merchants on the ground, the drivers in the streets. These are very tough jobs. You've really got to understand what those pain points are. So the first thing is immerse yourself in the ground truths, the reality of Southeast Asia. And the second thing is, like, when we want to make big change in society, no one company can do it. Even a company now with Grab's balance sheet, we can't do it on our own. And as we saw during crises, like during COVID, and now with the current difficult conditions that we're all facing, if you can work together with government and work with other partners in industry to make change together, then you can really move the needle. So I would say try to partner with government, try to understand the policy directions, and come together, and then you can have much bigger societal impact and be successful as a business.
Great, that's a nice plug for this event where you know, business people, policymakers, and tech gather. So we're running out of time, and you know, just want to thank you for doing this with us and sharing your learnings. And I'm sure you'll inspire more companies to come to a standstill and tackle, you know, the issue of AI. So thanks everyone for your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.